started on Saturday. But you know what? We ran out of time and we needed to do it all over again. So I'm going to take you through these delicious, light and fluffy dinner rolls because they are amazing. And you are going to want them on your table, and they're so easy and quick to do. So get comfortable, stay right there, grab your pencil and paper, and let's get it done. Hello, my friends. I wanted you to have this light, fluffy dinner roll recipe. And I thought, what better way to do it than to put it together right here in front of you. And that way you can have it on your dinner table anytime you want to. Sunday dinner, holiday meals, or just a weeknight. They're fast and delicious, and they don't require an overnight rise. So let's get to it and let's work through the recipe. First of all, in this bowl, I'm going to add in a cup of warm, it's actually a cup, this is a combination. I have a half cup of milk and I have a half cup of water. And I put them in my microwave for exactly 1 minute and 10 seconds. And that makes it just a little warm enough to be able to make the yeast happy and get everything done. So next, I need to add in a little bit of sugar. So I have the sugar here, and I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of sugar. So I've got my tablespoon, and we're going to, there's 1, because you know yeast like sugar, 2, 3, and it helps to activate that yeast. Now you could use rapid rise yeast, but it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your rolls are going to come out beautiful anyway. So we're not going to worry about that right now. All right, so we have our sugar in. And we're going to need yeast. So let's get the yeast. I keep my yeast in the freezer. And the reason for keeping it in the freezer is because of the fact that that's a good place to keep your yeast from going bad. Now, we're going to need about 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. So there's 1 that I'm sprinkling. There's 2, and we're going to give it about 1/2 and 1/2. So I'm going to take this spoon, I'm going to give it a nice stir, getting it down off the sides because that's what it's going to want to do. It's going to want to stick to the sides, and I can see bubbles already, so I know my yeast is good, but it's going to warm up a little bit. So I'm just going to sit that off to the side for a few minutes and let it get nice and happy in the sugary, milky water that we have here in this mixing bowl. And this mixing bowl is going to be our main vessel for making these rolls. So I'm going to sit this off to the side. Let me get a paper towel here to put my spoon on. Now I am using King Arthur because that's my favorite flour. And it's just the regular, unbleached, all-purpose flour. That's what I have in my flour container. I typically keep that in there. I either use King Arthur or some reputable brand to make my rolls. I even like White Lily. So one of those two will usually be in that vessel. Now, over here, I have a bowl. I've already measured out 2.5 cups of flour. And in here, I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt. And actually, well, I'm going to use my little measuring spoons right here. And put in our teaspoon. Sprinkle that in. Because we want that salt to mix in with the flour so that it doesn't affect the yeast itself. Okay? All right, there we go. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of oil to our wet ingredients. A 1/4 cup. This is our 1/4, and I'm using olive oil. What type of oil you use is up to you. It really doesn't matter, but I'm going to use olive oil because I think olive oil is very healthy. There we go. There's our 1/4 cup of oil. Use my spoon and get that all mixed together. It's just going to give our bread a good taste and a good texture. Give everything a chance to mix and get happy with each other. All right, now we're ready to, I'm going to get a little larger spoon or even a spatula will work. So I've got my spatula. Make sure I have everybody down in the liquid. Even though it's not that serious, it's just not that hard. And we're going to start to sprinkle in our flour into this mixture. So I'm going to sprinkle about half of it in and start to mix. And you're going to see this come together. We don't need a mixer. We're going to do it right here. And as you go, just kind of keep pulling things off the side because the flour and the liquid will stick. So we're just going to make sure, and do make sure that you kind of scrape the bottom of your bowl because you want to make sure that you have everything well mixed. Okay, that was half. I'm going to put in the other half. And you can feel the warmth inside of this bowl where the yeast has been working. And I'm going to continue to use my spatula. And you know how when you're using your KitchenAid or whatever type of mixer that you're using, it has a tendency to cling to your beater or your dough hook. Well, that's what's happening with the spatula. It's clinging. So I'm going to take all of this. I'm going to take my fingers and just pull whatever's on my spatula off. Put it into the bowl. Get all that cleaned off. And we're going to get our hand in it. My hands are clean, just so you know. And I'm going to take my hand and just start to do just a little kneading right here in the bowl. We're going to turn and fold, and we're going to keep doing that until we get everybody into this mass of dough. And you can flip it so you can see what's on the bottom. Kind of give it a turn so that you're picking everything up as you go. And this is going to be very shaggy at first, but it's going to be nice and warm. And you're going to enjoy working with it. And you want to be able to feel what you're doing. That's why you're putting your hand in there. Because if you're not feeling the warmth of that dough, then you know your yeast is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Because right now, the yeast is trying to, it gets hungry, literally. And it starts to try to develop the strands, the gluten strands. So we're just working with this. So here's our little mass of dough for our rolls. And It's not going to be smooth. It's going to be rough at this point because it hasn't had a chance to rise at all. So we've got everything all together. There's nothing on the bottom. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drizzle just a little bit of oil in. I'm going to take my dough, drop it in, give it a whirl, flip it over, and get it covered in the oil. And once you do that, then I'm going to put it back in, kind of press it in so that I will have an idea as to where it started. Now, let me wash my hands, and once I've done that, we're going to cover it in plastic wrap and put it in a nice warm place. Now, you've got a couple of options when it comes to putting your dough into a warm place. Now, I started my oven on low and turned it off, just so I could warm that oven up and have a nice place for this dough to be able to rise. I don't want it too hot, so I put it on its lowest setting and then turned it off immediately. As soon as it said it was there, off. It went off. So our dough is in the container. Let's get our plastic wrap. Because we don't want any drafts. And we're going to cover our bowl. Cover our bowl. Get it nice and covered. Now, guys, let me see how our oven's doing, and then we'll know if it's just warm enough. Yes, I think it's fine. Okay, I'm going to take my cast iron pans out. They're not hot, but they're a little warmer than I want them to be. And take those out, because we're not going to be using those. And I'm actually going to take this top shelf out. And I'm going to sit it here for now. And I'm just going to sit my dish. I think this is a little tall, so that's the reason why I'm hoping it will go in here. It doesn't want to go in. Okay, so we're going to have to rethink that. All right, put this back in. And we're just going to have to sit it here on top. We're going to sit it on top right there. But we know we're not going to cut the eye on to the stove. There we go. It's going to stay there in a nice warm place. And I think it'll be happy right there. I'm using my KitchenAid mixing bowl and hadn't realized that it would not fit in this top oven. So even after taking all the pans out, I discovered that I was going to have to sit it on top of the stove anyway. So we have it resting very nicely right there. We're going to leave it on top of this stove for 1 hour or until it has doubled. And once it doubles, I'll bring you right back. While our rolls are doubling, we're going to, this is a 9x13 pan. I'm going to take just a little bit of Crisco, or you can use butter if you like, but I like Crisco. And I am going to grease my pan well, because even though it's supposed to be non-stick, sometimes non-stick will stick. And I'm just going to spread my Crisco all over the bottom and the sides of my pan. And this is just preparing, making preparation so that, you know, we prepare now so things move along very quickly later. And I'll just set this off to the side so that I'll know that the pan itself is ready to receive the rolls. We're also going to need about a half stick of butter melted. So we're going to get that done as well. So I'm going to put the Crisco up and get that butter out. While you're waiting for the dough to rise, this is the perfect time to be able to get things cleaned up, wipe things down, put them back where they need to go, and that way your process moves along very quickly. So I'm going to wipe these containers off, get them back into the pantry, and that would allow me to do some other things later. When we are working in our kitchen, there are just some cooking strategies that we always need to keep in mind. And one of those is to try, if at all possible, to prep as many of the ingredients that you can in advance. And then you also want to make sure that you have read every word of the recipe. And especially if it's a new recipe, you definitely want to have that recipe close so that you can follow it to the letter. And you know, a recipe is really a guide, but you have to prepare the recipe first before you can decide how much tweaking you might want to do to it. Because if you haven't done it, you don't want to play with it initially. And anytime you're baking, you're dealing with a scientific batch of something in that bowl. And everything has its place and has a formula. How much of this you can have and how little of certain things that you can have. So you have to make sure that the formula stays perfect. Now, you could have used a timer in this particular case and just timed out an hour. But because I knew I had to clean up the kitchen and get things put back in place and do a few things in the kitchen, I really didn't need a timer. And plus, in the case of making any type of bread or rolls, your eyes are the best timer there are. And so you're able to actually look at where that dough has risen to. And the timer at this point is not necessary. But you will need a timer when it's time to cook that batch. Now, also, you want to make sure that you clean as you go, because you don't want a lot of dishes left over at the end to have to clean up. And mercy, 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 don't forget to multitask, because that is so important to getting everything done. So, let's get back to what we're doing. it has been exactly 1 hour. And I want you to see how beautiful this dough is. I can feel the warmth even on top of the plastic wrap. So I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to be careful not to ball up my plastic wrap because we're going to reuse it in just a few minutes. But we're going to work with our dough first. Oh yeah, oh yeah. So I'm going to lay that over here very carefully. And with clean hands, we're going to go in and degass this lump of deliciousness that's here. And you're going to see that it's still a little shaggy. It's not where you want it yet, but it's nice and warm. So we're going to degas it. We're going to put it back in, and we're going to let it rise one more time. And this time we're only going to give it about 30 minutes to rise. So I'm going to very carefully put that plastic wrap right back on it. Put it over in its nice warm place and allow it to rise a second time. So we've got it. It's going back. Second rise. My stove is nice and warm, the light's on, and we should have a beautiful dough in just a few moments. We have completed the second rise for about 30 minutes, and you can see that it has risen very well. So I'm just going to take a little sprinkle of flour and put it on my work surface here so that it won't stick, and it really shouldn't, but I'll just keep a little bit handy just in case we need it. And I'm going to let this roll right out of the dish. Now, hands are clean. I'm going to sprinkle just a tad bit on top, and I'm going to begin to fold, turn and fold, turn and fold. You'll see my cutting board is moving. That's okay. And we're going to turn and fold. This dough feels so good. And I'm going to roll it around for just a few minutes here, just to get a nice, smooth surface. And we're going to roll this right into a log. I'm going to take all of this . We're tucking and folding, and the warmth of this dough is just amazing. It is so nice. Now, like I said, we're going to get it into a nice log. I'm just kind of going back and forth. Until I get it pretty even. Now I'm going to get my bench scraper, and I'm going to slice this in half. There we go. Now I'm thinking I'd really like to have about 18 rolls. About 18. about 18. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to cut it in half down the center. Get a good cut. 2 pieces. I'll roll it out. Those ends tucked in. Now 18. So we'll start with 1 in half. And cut these in half. Okay, so we've got, and I'm going to actually cut these halves in half. I don't want my rolls too large. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, 8, 8, 8. We should do just fine right here. Okay, so I'm going to put those 8. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to roll these out. Keep those ends together. Cut it in half. Cut the half in half. And then cut each of those halves in halves. Okay, so there's our second 8. So 8 plus 8, that's 16. We're doing pretty good. Okay, let's see what we can do here. We've got our other piece that we're going to roll out and even it out so it's easy to work with. Here's our first cut. You know, if you apply just gentle pressure and roll it, it will just produce that log that you're looking for. Okay, so there we go. We got our half, half, half. And you know, sometimes we have to turn it and make the half this way. And if we find that they're off just a little bit, we'll add a bit as we go. Okay. So we're going to get a little few more than 18. And that's okay. More rolls. Now I had melted butter, and I think I'm going to have to. It's got a little cool. So I'm going to have to put this in the microwave and soften it up again. But I'm only going to put it in for a few seconds because I don't want it to be hot. Okay, I give it about 10 seconds and then we'll be ready. Now while we're waiting for that, I'm going to take one of these pieces and I'm going to roll it around in a ball. And it's going to come out to a nice little ball. The fun thing about homemade rolls is the fact that you are able to see that they're all different. You know, each one's going to have their own personality. And these rolls have to rise again. So we're going to put them in a nice warm place and let them rise. And this time, because it's in a flat pan, we'll be able to just, I'm going to put it in my warm oven. I'm going to go get that butter. And I will butter them just before I put them into the pan. So I'm going to take a few minutes and just get all of these into a ball shape. Some are going to be a little bit larger. Some are going to be a little bit smaller. But once they start to rise, you're not going to notice that much of a difference. They're going to be soft and delicious little pillows of rolls. Fluffy and delicious. Nice and light. Everyone is going to want you to make these rolls for them. When your arm gets tired, switch hands. Turning my oven light on so we can continue to warm that oven. Oh yeah, we're ready. That's good. 10 seconds was all it took to bring that butter back to the consistency that I had it originally. Now there's our bowl with the butter. Here's our 9 by 13 pan. I'm going to take my little balls and I'm going to place them into the butter, let them get nice and buttery, and then I'm going to place them in the pan. Just give them a little turn, and you're going to get about 4 per row. Because you want them to fill this pan up. And that's exactly what they're going to do. Now we should be able to get all of these rolls into this pan and have a beautiful pan full of dough. Now, you don't have to necessarily roll them on the work surface. You can certainly roll them in your hand, pop them into the butter. On some rows I did 5, just depending on the size of the roll. Now I'm going to give these, once I have them nice and buttered and in the pan, I'm going to give these probably just about another 45 minutes to an hour rise. And you'll know, because they're going to start to come up the sides and they're going to fill in this pan. 2 more. We're going to wiggle those in. This one I forgot to roll him. Okay. I'm going to stick him in there. Okay, we're ready to go. Everybody's in the pool. All right, we've got our pans, our rolls ready to go. They've got room to grow. We're going to use that same plastic wrap and cover them up. And our plastic wrap is on it. I'm going to take our towel and put over it just like we did initially. And I'm going to sit these into my warm oven. The light is on. And I'm going to give it about a 45-minute to an hour rise. Oven out, it's time to get the rolls out of the oven, and we're going to take a look at them. Then I'm going to turn the oven on, get it preheated and ready to bake them. You'll see that they have risen quite a bit. They're still going to have some time to work, but look at what a pretty pan of rolls that we have already. So I'm just going to let them stay here so that they'll be nice and cozy and warm while this oven is heating up. I'm going to put my oven on 375 and let that start. Okay. Well, let's get these beautiful rolls into the oven. They're nice and warm. You can see they've risen well. And I'm going to take the plastic wrap off. They smell amazing. Place them on the, I'm going to start them in the middle and see how that goes. And I'll come back to them in about 10 minutes just to check. Now my rolls are browning, and they're a very, very light brown. I don't know if you can tell, but I flipped the roll over because I was starting to smell them and I didn't want the bottoms to get too brown. You see the tops are light, the bottoms are brown. Now what I could do is to just, especially those in the middle, flip them over. But let me tell you, these little rolls are little fluffy pillows. So I'm going to take a few out and we're going to sample a few. I have some leftover butter from where we had buttered the rolls, and I want to just take these apart, and you're going to see I can just pull them apart and they are absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to scoop some of that butter that we had and just add a little bit to my roll on the top and the bottom. Let's give it a taste. They're perfect. Now, I have a choice. I can sit these back in and let them brown a little more, or I can just wait until I'm ready to, just before I'm going to serve them, slather a little more butter on them and put them back in the oven to warm up. But for now, I'm just going to like them. want these light, fluffy, and delicious dinner rolls on your table. They're going to be great, and your family's going to love them.